Hello, tech friends, and thank you for tuning into Emerging Technologies in Business, where we take a deep dive into different technologies that are impacting businesses today and in the very near future. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and this podcast is brought to you by ConcannonXR. Let's talk tech. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another episode. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Reza Pahl. He is the head of U.S. operations for VRdirect and all-around AR, VR enthusiast. VRdirect is an enterprise VR solution and platform that enables enterprises to create and use case-driven virtual reality solutions that truly support real-life business processes and deliver concrete business value. Reza, thank you so much for being on the show today. How's everything going in your neck of the woods?
Thanks, Brock. Everything is going really well here. Thanks for asking. Hope the same for you.
Oh, it's been great. I've got no complaints. If I'm lying, I'm dying in that aspect. So, VRdirect, you started in Europe a few years ago. You found a lot of success with Siemens, Nestle, Porsche, and you were announced as the head of U.S. operations literally 1 year and 1 day ago today that we're recording. So, How has the first year been in a new market for VRdirect, and were there really any differentiators that you had to adjust to for U.S.-based customers versus European ones that are utilizing this type of software?
Yeah. So I actually just found out that I was a year and a day ago, thanks to you. That's really exciting to learn. But yeah, as you mentioned, there's been a ton of success in Europe over the years. Like you mentioned, these corporations, and these corporations have a global presence. But in terms of key differentiators between U.S.-based customers in Europe, I mean, I would say it's mostly similar. I mean, one difference you see, at least, we have a lot of clients based in the DACH region or the German region. So in terms of like product, pitches and stuff, they want to know a lot about the product. So a lot of our sales presentations would kind of be purely about the product, very engineering based and technical. And one thing that I found in the US is there's a lot more geared toward the story behind the company and the vision of the co-founders. And a bit more of an emotional story behind it to make it a bit more exciting for U.S. customers. But it's been really exciting here for the first year in the U.S. The first half year, I would say, was mostly about building a presence. I think shortly after I was named head of U.S. operations, we went to the AWE in Santa Clara. So it was really exciting to see a lot of new XR updates going on and VR and AR. And that's always an exciting space to be in Silicon Valley. But yeah, we were able to build some presence there, had a really good booth right next to Meta, and started building our presence here in the US through marketing, through LinkedIn. And now in the last 6 months, it's really started to drastically pick up. So we have a ton of conversations, a lot of new clients coming up. I think this comes with a lot of the new headsets that are coming out. I know the Quest Pro was just recently announced and will be released soon, the Pico 4, there's rumors about the Apple headset realities coming out, of course, the Lenovo, and basically the list goes on. What it seems like is in the last 6 months, there's been a lot more educated people coming to me. Enterprises are really starting to want to dip their toes in what virtual reality is, and they're getting a little bit less scared and actually realizing that they really have to make this investment, and it's better to make it sooner rather than later.
You know, I have a question for you later on, but I'm going to bring that forward just because you just touched on it, right? If a company is looking to dip their toe in the proverbial VR waters, VRdirect is offering a free trial right now with the Pico Neo 3. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So that's basically exactly that. So it's a free trial with the Pico Neo 3. We have hardware partners in Europe with the VR experts. We're hardware partners with Mace Virtual Labs in the US. And that's basically it. So if you're interested in seeing some of our client examples or seeing what a project might look like using the VRdirect Studio platform, you're able to contact us and able to get a Pico 3 and use it for a week and check out how you like it and have conversations with us basically to steer you toward what kind of use cases you might be interested in and what the steps are, what the steps you'll need to take to basically realize any projects that you want to do.
It really is kind of a great entry-level way to get in, right? Because you guys are not only having the Pico 3 that's available for people to explore if this is something that they are truly interested in going forward with their business. You also have a free license that's available. I'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But I think the biggest thing to me was going through your system and looking at the VRdirect platform. And when I was looking at it, it seems like it's meant to be almost like a Microsoft PowerPoint for VR creation. We don't want to make it difficult. We want everyone to be able to do it seamlessly, regardless of where it starts to where it ends. It shouldn't be something where you feel like you have to go to college and take a couple editing courses to be able to do something like that. Can you talk a little bit more about that platform and how you're utilizing that today for your enterprise customers?
Yeah, sure. I'm really glad you said that. And I know my CEO is going to be happy that you compared it to Microsoft PowerPoint. That's really the intended goal for our software. So we want to make it as easy as possible to create content or create virtual reality experiences. So it's designed to be super easy to use. It's no code, drag and drop. But basically, the platform solves two main problems. So it solves the project creation side of things, and it solves the project distribution side of things. And the way it does that is with our platform, the VRdirect Studio. You basically make it as easy as possible to put together projects, like I said, drag and drop, no code. And then with the distribution side of things, we have our VRdirect Player, which is a native app that allows for a seamless, smooth viewing experience across basically all the main the VR standalone headsets out there. But we also have a native app on iOS and Android. We also have a native web player. So if that's what your functionality needs to be, then we're also able to do that. Yeah, and it's really an enterprise solution. So not only is it super easy to create content and distribute it, but the big goal is to be focused on enterprises. So on top of it being really easy, it's scalable. So it's not just meant to create something for one small section of a company, but it's really supposed to be scaled across the entire organization. And like I said, it has that flexible distribution. So when a new headset comes out, we'll also be creating a native app for that so that our clients are then future-proofed.
So with the new Quest Pro coming out, I'm assuming that that's something you're definitely looking at. VRdirect specifically looking for enterprise customers. They finally have a Quest headset that's going to be meant for enterprise customers. So do you see that being a mass adoption, or do you see really the Quest Pro being that turning point for where companies really start buying into VR? Or do you think we're still going to wait out for Apple? Because I'm not quite sure yet. I think this is probably the first one, but I wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely extremely exciting news. We've said, I feel like many times in the VR industry that there's going to be some kind of turning point. I always feel like we're almost like right there.
Right?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's a super exciting step. I'm just really excited that it's at a higher price point too, because it allows developers to kind of push the boundaries of VR as well. And of course, as an enterprise company, I'm happy that it's really an enterprise designed headset. But yeah, I think in terms of investment, I think there is going to be a lot of adoption, a lot of investment, but there still will be people waiting out. And that's why we find it important to we're device agnostic. So if you do invest in the Quest Pro, the project that you create is going to work on the Quest Pro, but when, let's say, the Lenovo headset comes out or when the Apple headset comes out, you'll also have that functionality. So the project you created didn't just go to waste. Yeah,
that ubiquity is looking like it's going to be more and more important, especially with how rapidly we're starting to see these headsets come out. It's almost it reminds me a lot of the smartphone revolution that was really happening when Trio and Android and Apple were all really fighting it out. And there would just be a new one. And a lot of those applications weren't cross-platform enabled. So having that ubiquity really just lends yourself to making it easier. And the same thing for the player being ubiquitous as well. That's such a big deal for whatever use cases that people may have for it specifically. Now, I know you're a big AR VR guy, right? I know that you've been a big AR VR enthusiast for a long time, and I love having conversations like this for me personally. So here's my question for you. Think about the head straps on these headsets, right? So if you're looking, obviously, you know all of these at this point, but here's the Quest. It's got the stretchy bands. These things are insane. They're loose. They fall apart all the time. For me, I think the Pico actually is the one that got it right with the screw-inable back end that actually screws everything in unilaterally, right?
Yeah.
So my question with that is that it's been a couple of years since this has been reported, but ABC News reported that back in 2019, 40 to 70% of people were getting headaches or dizziness or nausea after 15 minutes of using the VR. And we know that's gotten better. Yeah. But what do you think the next step is that's going to help just like the head straps. When somebody finally figures it out, what do you think to fix the distance problem?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of small things and it's to be continually developing. But yeah, as you said, the head strap is definitely a major factor. I remember I had to get the Elite strap for the Quest 2. It was very front heavy, and I myself also got a headache. But in terms of form factor in general, it's definitely something that I think the VR industry is moving toward. As you see, the Quest Pro and the Pico 4 and Pico Pro, they got the pancake lenses to make it smaller. They have the battery in the back to kind of balance that headset. I think those are all factors that are definitely going to reduce motion sickness and headaches. I think when it comes to motion sickness, though, some people probably will always get motion sickness. I think you mentioned 70%. It'll definitely be lower than that. But I think a lot of it really depends on what you're doing. So if you're doing something with a lot of artificial movement where your eyes see that you're moving and you're going through some really speedy stuff, then definitely you'll start feeling sick because it just doesn't make sense. But if you're in an environment and you're doing some kind of virtual reality experience that doesn't have a lot of that artificial movement, it should be okay for most people. And of course, I think the higher hertz or the higher frame rate within a headset was one of those things that helped with the movement thing. And there's what I think is really interesting is not only are there hardware improvements, but there's a lot of improvements that can be made in the software. And I think that's where developers can get clever and tricky and figure out different ways to basically reduce the motion sickness or make it a more enjoyable experience that you can have for a longer period of time. And I think that's especially where we might find some new discoveries basically that no one could really anticipate and that could change the game. But of course, it'll get better in the future, but I'm sure there will always be some people that have some kind of motion sickness or some kind of experience where you can, I'm sure, induce some motion sickness.
I've actually, so I've had a bunch of different guests on the show, and I've gotten to get feedback from them on different things. So I didn't realize that we didn't have elbows whenever we're in VR for that reason, because it causes us to get sick or not have a real spatial awareness of where we are. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And I did also. Yeah. Right. I would have never known that was the reason, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that was cool was I interviewed someone from a company called Tilt 5, and they have a retro reflective game board, right? That might be the end solution to where we're no longer viewing in, we're actually reflecting the light back into our eyes. I just don't know if that's realistic for a VR solution, but that way no one ever gets sick because it's truly just a reflection right back into it. But who knows? That's down the line. That's for smarter people than me to figure out. I'm just here to play with it and talk about all the cool stuff that it does.
Sure, yeah.
So you did touch on this earlier, too. You mentioned that some companies are starting to invest heavily in AR and VR. Do you see that as something that also attracts a higher level of talent compared to those that are maybe too tentative right now to join that space?
Yeah, I mean, I would say overall, definitely. Us at VRdirect, we're firm believers that VR, XR, AR is going to be in the future. So investing in it early is definitely a smart decision. We say, smart brands are investing now. And I think it does attract more talented workforce. And a lot of the younger generation is also very attracted to this new cutting edge technology. So I think definitely is.
At this point, are the kids just saying, like, I either want to be a YouTube creator or I want to work for Meta or work in the metaverse at some point? I think that's where they're at, right? The younger version, like, that's what they want to do. They have no interest in being a mechanic or an electrician. Like, that's just not on their purview right now.
Yeah, and we'll still need those people, of course. And what's fascinating with VR is you might be able to train the younger generation in a more fascinating and interesting way to become those types of job roles. I think that's where it's also really powerful, especially in terms of recruiting that younger talent. One of the use cases I saw actually more recently was kind of a job profile presentation in VR, showing off like what a day in the life might look like at a certain role. And it might be able to attract a lot of new people that don't necessarily know what that job might look like and get some new interest there.
100%. And you no longer have to fly those trainers from town to town. You can literally just do it from one location. Yeah. You can even, they have that see what I see type of technology now too, where they can show you in real time. You can augment something directly in front of you, especially in the healthcare world where we're so dying for doctors and nurses right now. Like that's got to be so immensely helpful. And I've been hearing a lot of folks that have been going into that space. Yeah. I do have one more question for you, though, Reza, if you don't mind. Last question, and I leave it open-ended for a reason because I always just like to get everybody's non-biased answer of anything I'll put on you. What do you think the world looks like in the AR, VR, MR world in the next 5 years? Call it 10, 14, 2027.
Okay. Well, that's a really tough question, to be honest. I mean, I think it's going to be, for me, I'm really fascinated and really excited about it. I think it's going to be a much more smooth and seamless experience in general. I see a lot of movement toward the kind of mixed reality space, with a lot of the new headsets having color pass through. I think that'll be a really interesting opportunity. And the Quest Pro also has even like, you're not even able to, it's optional if you want to fully close yourself off. So I think in terms of what it's going to look like in the next 5 years is, increased form factor, a lot more seamless, and it's going to have color pass through, and you're going to be able to potentially interact with your real world. With the new partnership that Mark Zuckerberg announced with Microsoft, I think there's going to be potential in new ways of working. So I don't think it's going to be quite yet in 5 years that people will be completely replacing laptops, but it might start going toward that direction where there's a lot of new exciting workflows. But in general, I'm extremely to find out what's coming out. I mean, there's going to be new worlds, new ways of connecting socially, new types of training. It's going to be present, I believe, in basically any enterprise will have some kind of virtual reality. And I think it's a really exciting space. And I think we do have to be careful too, because sometimes it can be a little bit scary too, to imagine a world where augmented reality is present in everyone's lives and there's a lot of advertisement or social media. But in general, I think it's really exciting for us.
I'm the same way. I'm really excited to see what we're going to have. I don't know if something's going to get eliminated though. It's like everything else in history. As things technologically improve, there's a reason why we don't have typewriters anymore. We can solve it on a Word document realistically. I'm wondering if cell phones might be actually the next thing to go, because it could just be included. Because what's the point if you have it in front of you and you're wearing them all the time? Is there a point to throw something up your ear? Now it's going to be the kids that are going to be our grandkids. They're going to be like, you had to put the phone to your ear? Like you had to hold it up? Let alone the rotary dial and everything else like that.
Right.
Reza, I got to tell you, fantastic conversation with you. Thank you for being on the show. I really did enjoy our conversation, and I think our audience members really got some great insights about VRdirect. For those at home listening, if you want to try VRdirect's platform, make sure to go sign up for a free license. Yes, it is completely free, and it's an unlimited free license for forever. And you can go do that yourself if you go check it out. Go to VRdirect.com/signup. I also want to thank ConcannonXR for sponsoring this podcast. You can find them on social media at ConcannonXR, and you can find our podcast on socials as well at ETIB Podcast. Thank you again, Reza, and for VRdirect, for you guys for being here, being on the show, and telling us a little bit more about everything. I hope you enjoyed the time. Did you have a good time?
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, Brock. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. That's been our show. I've been your host, Brock Riney, and we're going to talk some more emerging tech next time.